Welcome to Saturday's Warrior, your official BYU representative for the College Huddle, the largest fan led college sports podcast community. I'm Trevor, and we are live after the dominant BYU win over UCF in our latest installment of a segment we do each week. We call Saturday's Night Live, as we react in live time right after the BYU games, win or lose, which losing hasn't been an issue as of late. The whole purpose of this segment is to keep the conversation going after the game. So please join in with your comments and your thoughts on the game. The whole point is to get everybody to interact and get your feedback and thoughts and be part of the conversation. So please put your comments in, and I will do my best to get to all of them as we go throughout this and kind of break down this game. So getting into it, well, actually, before we do too, if you have not already subscribed to this channel, if you're new to the channel or anything, we'd really appreciate it if you gave the video a like, you subscribe to the channel. They're really easy things for you to do that really boost us and help us a lot. We just hit a big milestone of 1,500 subscribers. So thank you to all those who have subscribed. We really appreciate it. So now let's get to the game. And the last bit of the game was a little bit of a snoozer, which is a good thing because that means BYU's winning and winning big. What you hate to see is BYU kind of let up off the gas as they tend to do, and they let another team kind of come back into the game, have just a little bit of life, not much, but they had some, and I would have preferred they hadn't had any. I think my score prediction for the game was 38-28. I really had no idea. The final score ended up way too close to that prediction. I would have preferred it way more off, as it looked like it was going to be for most of the second half, at least, but much of the game with BYU up. So, but other than that, a great game from BYU. Wasn't perfect by any means, but they did enough and they controlled the ball. I mean, having LJ Martin back is just huge, allowing BYU just to eat up big chunks of time off the clock at a time while still scoring and really just dominating that and being able to keep UCF from even being able to attempt a whole lot, which obviously the defense doing their part in shutting things down. So BYU looking really good. My favorite thing about all this is with BYU as an underdog going into this game and just completely showing why that was completely ridiculous. I mean, all season long, this was the game that bettors that ESPN, everybody had as the most likely loss for BYU all season. And BYU pretty much put that to rest pretty quickly and pretty soundly, other than, near the end when, as I mentioned, they started letting their foot off the gas. But anyway, so please let me know in the comments what your reactions were from the game. What are your big takeaways? What were you expecting to see from this game, and did you see it? Did BYU do enough to kind of quiet any doubts that you have at this point in the season, if you have any doubts? And did you think that this game was going to be closer? Because I really didn't know what to expect. UCF is down, obviously going through several quarterbacks, but what they did to Iowa State last week, which was very similar to what Oklahoma State did to us. Obviously, RJ Harvey, who still had, I think, a pretty decent game. I have to look at his stats. He was somebody that scared me. And I did think that BYU was going to go through and let's see. RJ Harvey had 127 yards, 2 touchdowns off of 16 carries, but a 54 long. He was a threat, and we knew that. And he obviously was still able to go out and get his. But, I did think that Jay Hill, after a week of preparation and hopefully last game against Oklahoma State, was a wake-up call for this team, and they certainly came more prepared and ready to play. This game was a little uncharacteristic in the sense that there were a bit of penalties, a lot of them, on the along the line of scrimmage, and so I'm not entirely sure what led to that this week. But um, yeah, so again, let me know. Was this the outcome you were expecting, or were you nervous about this being a loss for BYU? And how does this shape your thoughts on the potential of BYU being able to go undefeated in the regular season? Obviously, now 8-0, 4 games left, uh, and you know the back end of the schedule is lining up nicely in terms of the teams that BYU has to play. So, how confident are you that BYU will be able to win out the rest of those games? And at the very least, even if a loss or two losses come, how confident are you that BYU will make it to the Big 12 championship game uh, and be able to have a chance to play themselves into the playoff? That is the question. But so this is a game. If you watch I do a weekly segment whenever we have a game. Try to bring on other guests from the college huddle to come in and talk about their team and the upcoming matchup. This last week we had UCF, and so we had Roger from the Knighted Ones podcast, and we were talking about it. And I was telling him that I thought I might go to this game. I was really looking at it and had seriously considered it. My brother was there, had a buddy there, and was looking at going, but it just didn't work out in the end, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, yeah, maybe you can thank me for not going, because these are all of the games that I have attended as a non-student at BYU throughout the years. And there are a lot of losses there, a lot of L's. And part of that's because a lot of those games have been on the East Coast or whatever, but way too many L's there. So by me not going, I might have jinxed BYU, although it really seems like nothing is holding this team back this year. There are all sorts of things that they are, kind of curses or other trends, that negative trends that they're breaking in terms of, this was an East Coast game, but we had an afternoon game. We've had all kinds of trends. I think winning a Big 12 game on the road that BYU's been able to overcome, and so I'm not sure even I could have jinxed them in this game. It looks like they had things wrapped up there pretty squarely. So Alex T comments. He says, was worried, but they took care of business. I do worry about the ending, why we push the brakes. That's Satake's style. He does not like to run up the score. And I mean, strategically, a lot of it was, hey, we've had success running the game. We've controlled the clock. We're trying to get this clock to run out as much as possible. So I think, running a lot of run plays and not pushing quite as hard downfield, made sense strategically in a lot of ways. But it does seem like the whole team, the mentality kind of just kind of let up. Like they're having fun, which is good, but I don't know. I don't know if they were or weren't, but it kind of felt like they weren't taking it as seriously. I don't know. Would like to see BYU in those times kind of shut it down, and it looked like they were going to, because they were ripping off a bunch of long runs, and looked like we were going to score another touchdown. Ended up having to settle for a field goal, but it was still good because it was added an extra possession that UCF would have to score in order to catch up. But again, the defense, I don't know if they start rotating in more bench guys or not to get them more reps and to avoid any serious injuries, which is also a high priority. So some of it is just prioritizing other things over score. But yeah, sometimes it would be nice just to shut a team down. Also, you got to give UCF credit. Putting in another quarterback seemed to spark some life into them. So I don't know. Satake is a nice guy. Doesn't like running up the score. That does seem like some of it. But strategically, when you look at it, I kind of get the mindset. But sometimes you'd like to see him just push a little bit harder. Um, and Alex says, "True, thank you." Anyway, so but yeah, it's a good question because it's a terrible way to end the game. Uh, Not very fun to watch and not very satisfying. But all right. So I've spoken says UCF was favored in this game. Uh, uh, what the heck? LOL. They got beaten so bad that they had to replace their quarterback. The game was over at that moment. Yeah, at that moment, it really was. Although with a quick touchdown after they put him within striking distance. Crazier things have happened in football games. You don't want to take any chances, but yeah, at that point, just milking the clock is you know the clock. The most time you can run off is kind of your best strategy, but also getting more first downs and keeping possession of the ball is a big part of that strategy. But yeah, absolutely, that game, even though UCF was kind of um, having some runs and they were working their way back into it. At no point I don't think that they really felt like they were going to um, really push to win the game or really come back. But um, wanted to look at a couple tweets here to that point of them being an underdog or not. But this is by Cougars Dogs. Says underdog or upset alert. Underdog BYU enters the fourth quarter with a 24-point lead against UCF. Again, it's a little tongue in cheek there. And then I want to talk about that in a second. And then Robbie McComb says the odds makers forgot to put LJ Martin in their algorithm. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. What a stud LJ Martin is. In fact, let's look at his stats here. Is that final? Oh, only 101 yards. It felt like he had more, but he's just clutch, hard to bring down. He just has this next level vision. Hinkley Rapati, he's growing on me. He can tear off some of those bigger runs, and we've seen some good moments from him. He was really frustrating for me earlier in the season. He's great on those. As he's kind of a lead blocker. He's just such a big dude, and I know they don't want to risk hurting LJ Martin in those types of plays, which I think is a big reason why you keep running him, is so that it's not as transparent what you're going to do when he is in there for those types of plays. But um, let's see, Jake Retzlaff had 228 yards. Actually, 228 passing yards in this game, and it's crazy because the the last three games prior to this, he'd thrown for exactly 218 yards. And so, shoot, if only we would have had maybe one more drop pass or something in there. But no, I that's a wild stat, and fairly consistent, I guess, in terms of his throwing yards and what he's done. Would love to see this come up a little. Now, not all of that has been on him. What was it? What was his completion rate tonight? It was 6. Okay, so yeah, right there. Again, a little better though tonight. Um, so I guess let's see what else here. Looking at this, the Will Farron run. What a great play! It totally had me fake that, because I remember thinking like, yeah, makes sense. Just get the points up on the board, but also kind of felt like territory where BYU could take a chance to do that, run a play. So I was surprised they hadn't, and totally caught everybody off guard. I love that. Saw another tweet from Johnny Linehan saying, "Oh yeah, now running or fake kicks and punts are cool." But anyway, he's still bitter just because he did his failed attempt on 4th and 18 against Boise State. Anyway, so Jordan Berry, how was UCF favored? I got to start betting on the Cougs. Some people made some money tonight. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I think I saw someone else comment that is just, man, this is a betters. Betters are just cleaning up on the Cougars this year. And actually, I thought about that. Like, I don't bet. I don't. But this year, I was kind of tempted. Like, okay, the over under on or the projection for BYU for the season was 4.5 games. And I was like, I don't know. if BYU makes a bowl game, but it really feels like they're at least going to get 5 games. I felt very confident about that. Um, so yeah, I did not expect them to go 8-0 though. So yeah, it's wild that bettors just seem to not like BYU. BYU has I think covered the spread uh, on most games. So I don't know the exact stats on that, but yeah, it's just been a lot of disrespect. But I'm okay with that. Like, keep putting BYU as an underdog. I think they use that as motivation, and they should. Nobody believes in this team. It's all fluky. It's great to have a game that isn't fluky. I mean, they did get a couple interceptions, but I'm trying to think now at the time that they came, but it doesn't feel like, especially the second one, the game was out of hand. The first one, even then, it wasn't like those were game changers and oh, BYU just won it because of this or that. And it wasn't a fluky game. It was pretty dominant. BYU just controlled the whole game through. So that's why you'd love to see BYU just really close out UCF, because people are going to look at the score of this and say, okay, yeah, 13-point win over a struggling UCF team. Big deal. So it'd be nice to see BYU, or the score, reflect how dominant this game was. So BYU can get a little bit more love in the polls but ultimately the AP voters, they don't really matter at this point. We know we're going to be getting the committee for the college football playoff pretty soon, and really those rankings are what really matters. But you can't tell me that they don't look at the polls at all. And so plus, you'd love BYU to climb as high as they can, so that if and when they do stumble at all, they still fall to a point where they're within striking distance to get to the playoff, even if they don't happen to win the Big 12 championship. So let me get to a few other comments here. A few more of you joining in. And Dmitry Snikov, hopefully I got that right, says, go Cougs. Yeah, 8-0. I mean, there's a lot to be happy about. We should be very happy about this. I think some of the excitement is down just because, unlike the Oklahoma State game, this game just became kind of a snoozer early on. And I was checking, some of the other games, watching Baylor play Oklahoma State, which actually I want to talk about some of the Big 12 games and implications that has. But some more comments. Mind Axiom says, go Cougars as well. Hashtag go Cougars. Cougs, sorry. And 1-2 joining us says, that was a great game by BYU, all phases of the game and many players involved. A few bad lapses on defense, but great plays too. Yeah. By no means was this a perfect game by really any phase of the game. Well, maybe special teams did pretty well. I don't remember any blunders there, but offense had a few moments that that could have been better. Defense, you're right, had some lapses, but also had some great plays. And so it just looked like BYU, as I was just saying, didn't need any of those super flashy, crazy moments. It was just a lot of dominance. I would say the flashiest thing was the faked field goal attempt with Will Farron running for the first down, which was pretty awesome. One that a highlight I think that we'll see a lot more of. But yeah, it was just like you said, a great game. And that's to my point. I would love to see that final score reflect it, but nonetheless, Cougs won and we're 8-0. So that's what matters. We have the alternative hypothesis says smart people will look at when the points were scored, good power rating programs discount garbage time. Yeah, you're right. I mean, even I do that. I'll go in and I'll see a final score and open it up, as you look around random teams or whatever. Oh, how to get here. And when you see, a bunch of points in the fourth quarter, you're like, oh, okay. You realize, unless it's both teams and the score's close or whatever, okay, this team was just kind of picking up some garbage time minutes. So hopefully voters do that. But based on how they've been voting and the types of things I've heard said about BYU, I question some of these voters, what goes into it, what their mindset is. I'm not saying BYU should be number one in the nation and number 11 is really good. But I think BYU's done enough with the resume to be top 10, and especially ahead of some of these teams that are currently ahead of them that have had some blunders along the way. It very well could be that Clemson or Notre Dame are better than BYU. Maybe they play in a head-to-head, and maybe BYU loses. I'm not saying I think that's what would happen, but you're projecting now. Let's look at the body of work, what they have done, and have they lost to, a Northern Illinois? If that's the case, when you've got an undefeated team who's beaten some good teams, and in the case of Kansas State, beating them really soundly, you'd like all that to be reflected. But anyway, I've kind of gone off, but appreciate the comment there. Okay, got Spencer Duncan, my buddy. What's up, man? How much did the second string defense play in the fourth quarter? That's a good question. And I don't know the answer to that, because I usually assume, I start looking around and seeing how clean those jerseys are on the players that are in there. But if we look at the interceptions, you had Satawala. I don't know what string he is and how much playing time he normally gets, but that's not a name from a player, that gets called out a lot. Let's see. He looks to be a bench guy as far as I can tell, and he's not a player I'm very familiar with. I know I've seen the name on the depth chart, but actually I could go look at the latest depth chart. But anyway, not a lot of stats for the season. So that to me, and he pulled that interception. And again, that was one that was just a gift. That was just floated right over to him. Couldn't have been easier, but so he was the benefit of that. But yeah, so I believe we did in garbage time. And honestly, more important than running up the score is keeping your players healthy for a deeper run. So again, I respect that from Satake, trying to protect the players. And but it's just, when you see a team start clawing back in, but you're right. Going back to the previous comment, if anyone even bothers to look at the box score, you're going to see 14 of UCF's 24 points came in the fourth quarter of a game that BYU was up in significantly. They should be able to piece that together. All right. So 1-2 says 8-0 going into a bye, above 500 in the conference guaranteed. Pressure on Iowa State. CFP rankings will be out November 5th before Utah game. Could be top 10. Yeah, BYU could be top 10, and I would hope so. I mean, we need some havoc to happen along the way too, right? I mean, BYU might just the committee might just put BYU in there. That only one spot, that wouldn't be crazy, but having some havoc along the way would be great. Looking at the top 25 games this week, Miami against Florida State. This one, Miami losing along the way would be one that would be nice, considering the ACC is trying to get two bids into the playoff. If we get them down to a one playoff bid team conference, that would go a long ways towards helping the runner-up in the Big 12, still make the conference, the playoff. Which honestly, right now, I don't know how you couldn't feel good about BYU. Thanks for comment 1-2. How you couldn't be confident about BYU going into that game against Iowa State, but if Wisconsin could pull off something, that would be good. I don't know if BYU would move past Penn State at this point. Would love to see the SEC continue to, beat themselves up, and not in a way where, hey, we all have just a couple losses, because then they all just work their way back up in the top 10. It's almost better for, I think, if the SEC had maybe a couple dominant teams and then a lot of other teams with 3 to 4 losses, I think would be better, instead of all of them with a couple. LSU's loss to USC does not look good, but it apparently doesn't seem to be affecting them too much, because they're still ranked 8th. Get into Big 12 games. Kansas State, we'd like them to win, right? BYU has the tiebreaker over Kansas State. So even if BYU drops a game, but also just because they're doing well. It just continue to make that win look better, even though both of these teams are on a record. Kansas, I don't think can do anything to really change the narrative of their season. SMU, I hate to say it, not a team I like to root for, but that is one that we would like to see them go in and make it to the ACC conference championship game and win that. If they became a playoff team, I mean, that just, again, makes that win so much better. Looking at some of these other ones, Vandy, I didn't see that, came back and made it relatively close there against Texas. Would have been cool to see them win. But again, I think it's better if they have, some teams that really are strong at the top. And now Vanderbilt with 3 losses, if they could go, I guess 2 conference, but 3 losses total, could go pull off some upsets over some other teams along the way would be great. No surprise there with Oregon. This was a bummer. Would have been great. But, it's kind of a fluke, right? Because Ohio State won a close one. No, of course not. But yet they're still going to get more credit for beating a team that was 5-2 than it seems BYU gets for dismantling Kansas State. So I don't understand that. But this one was really disappointing. Notre Dame and Navy, not only I think like most people, we like rooting for the service academies. It's great that Army and Navy were 2 of the undefeated teams this late into the season and really put, especially in Army's first season in the AAC, with those 2 lined up to play for the conference championship. I don't know, just really cool. And they still might, but would have been awesome to see them beat Notre Dame. And I was wrong. I was talking earlier about, I referenced Notre Dame. They are behind BYU in the rankings, but let's see, Indiana. I mean, I guess if they keep winning, that's great. Although I think once they get to some of the stiffer competition in the Big Ten, they're going to lose and fall back. Bummer, always fun to root against Alabama. And then, Ole Miss, I don't know if they're really going to playoff hopeful. I guess technically they still are because they're SEC and they're only 2 losses. So Oklahoma winning that game would have been great. So anyway, we could look at what goes on next week in the bye week. Maybe we'll do that next week. But let's in the videos this upcoming week. But let's look at the Big 12 real quick. Out of these games, we don't play West Virginia, so I guess it's great to have if Arizona could win this one. Houston, I don't see them beating Utah, but it is who I picked to win because I didn't want to pick Utah this week. So we'll see what happens there. Utah is also going to go into a bye week if they came in off a loss and had to sit on that for an extra week. Or maybe they'd use that as motivation. Who knows? But going into Salt Lake, it will be tough. Cincy, Colorado, either way, whoever loses this is probably going to be kind of knocked out of the Big 12 conference championship race. And so I guess whoever scares you more is who you'd probably rather see lose. I guess Colorado, since they've the higher end talent, but they're also kind of sporadic, but also they're just fun to hate. These games right here, Texas Tech losing. So they're kind of out of the conference race right now. I don't think mathematically, but most likely. It's hard to say with all the tiebreakers and things. TCU winning a close one there. And then Baylor, again, this is I think a pretty good team. They struggled, but they had a tough schedule and they played a lot of teams well. You could argue they were really close to beating Colorado. They could almost just as easily be 5-3 right now. Gave BYU a scare. So I think that's a pretty good team right there. Anyway, so I think that's, at this point, it really does feel like it's most likely a 3-way race. Although, again, there's a few other contenders, but between BYU, Iowa State, and Kansas State. And BYU has the tiebreaker over Kansas State, and Iowa State and Kansas State play at the end of the year. So that seems like it'll be kind of a play-in game, most likely, right there. John Dotter, commented, 8-0 was good, but next game again against Utah on their home field is always tough. The Holy War in 2 weeks. Yeah, absolutely. Do not overlook the Holy War. Utah's been down, but these games are crazy. Think of how well, go back throughout history. And, during the independence era, many of those games, even when BYU was not looking as great, came down to the wire, came down to one possession. I mean, you look at just anything could happen. Was it 2018 with Zach Wilson in where we led through like 3 quarters and then kind of let that one slip away. I remember we're just watching the clock that whole game, just wanting to slip away. But uh, so anything could happen, and it's their home field, which Arizona's already beat them there, but it's gonna um, those games are always good, and this feels like this is about all that Utah really has to play for at this point. I mean, yes, they still can make a bowl game, but I think this is the last thing that they have to be like truly excited for in this season. If they could play spoiler to BYU a little bit, would give them a lot of life because this is a downtrodden fan base right now, really looking for something. And I think we'll see how they do against Houston. I think instead of using, if they were to lose tonight, Houston has scored a touchdown. So it looks like if, sometimes teams use it as motivation to get back in. If there was a loss, they want to come back. But if they lost to this Houston team right now before this bye week, I do think that would crush their spirits a little bit. But who knows? You don't want to mess with that. BYU needs to take it seriously and continue to think one game at a time. Because even though all these games are favorable for BYU, they are also any of them could be losable as well. And so I think BYU seem a little bit more back on track. They had a full week of prep time for a team, even though they traveled a couple time zones east, and they seem more focused and locked in. Like against Oklahoma State, granted, give a lot of credit to Oklahoma State and their coaching scheme and everything, but yeah, they were focused, and BYU was not. And it seems like hopefully they got back into it this week, and now they've got 2 weeks to really prep, focus on Utah, and I'm really excited to see what this team does. All right, let's see. We got another comment here. BYU Cougs 25. Never doubted them once. Go Cougs. Glad you didn't. This was one of those games where in my head I was just like, I guess I overthought it like a lot of people. They look dangerous. This looks like a team. RJ Harvey seems scary. BYU struggled against Oklahoma State in the run, going east and all that stuff. And I think we overthought it. In my heart, I really felt like BYU should win this game. Like I said, I was real close to going to this one. Would have been a blast to have been there. It looked like, I mean, it was just like and this is what my, the people I knew who was there were texting me, just telling me, I mean, it was like a BYU home game. And I'm sure those of you who watched at home could hear it too. I mean, it sounded like, I remember I think it was when they reviewed the call on whether it was a first down or not, when Darius Lassiter had that pass and kind of jumped out of bounds and to get that first down, and they reviewed it. And when they announced the outcome of that, I mean, it sounded like almost like it was the home team with how loud the cheers went at that moment. This seems like, to be fair, UCF, their fan base is probably a bit beat down right now with how things have gone over the last several weeks for UCF. But it sounds like by all accounts that people are saying that no team has showed up at UCF at the bounce house in quite such numbers as a visiting team. So what a great showing by BYU fans. Way to go, everyone that showed up. And way to never doubt. I mean, once the game started, I felt pretty good. I think Oklahoma State was different. I felt pretty good throughout the week, and it got closer and closer. I got more nervous. This one, I kind of started out more nervous, and throughout the week, I started feeling better about it until by the time the game started, I felt pretty good about it. But so let me know if what you think BYU's odds are or chances. Like, how good do you feel that BYU's chances of going 12-0 right now are after this win? With 4 games left, BYU's 8-0. Do you think that they can win these last 4 games? And right now, I mean, you got to feel pretty good. You're 8-0 with a very winnable schedule, but obviously there's pitfalls all around. The other thing I was thinking is or maybe this is going to start jinxing BYU, but do you start looking at buying some postseason tickets? Do you buy tickets to Arlington, or do you wait and save up for a playoff game? If they win the Big 12, it looks like they'd be the most likely the Fiesta Bowl. So I think there's a lot of Utah fans that are probably selling their Fiesta Bowl tickets. You might be able to get some on the cheap there, and in that case. But I don't know. I think BYU is looking really good, and what's great is even though they look flawed, and there's moments where they have some things to clean up, that they're still winning big like this and convincingly. And so we got to feel pretty good that BYU can win and win well and in different ways each week, different people stepping up, different types of games, and yet BYU continues to do it. And it seems like they keep learning and improving along the way. One thing I noticed, talk about improving. I know this is really a dumb thing to say because Jake Retzlaff got sacked on the play, but the play he got sacked where it looked like he was going to pitch it back to Parker Kingston. It's probably a trick play that got blown up, and he just got completely devoured. But it looked like there was a small window where he might have still been able to get it to Parker, and he just decided to hold on and eat it, which is actually improvement. Like, it shows his maturity and his willingness to say, you know what, let's live to play another down, and let's not do anything stupid to give this away. And, I'm so glad to see that, because I know he so badly wants to make those plays and make something crazy happen and do it. But he's learning when to rein it in and when to let it loose. And he is just able to pick up that. And that's the other thing. His throwing, he didn't have the most impressive throwing game. I mean, a lot of his stats were boosted by that touchdown pass by Chase Roberts, which was just outstanding. He was able to stay in, and he realized he had a clear path, because some people might have just quickly, I got the first down, I got to step out, stop the clock, and he realized he had a clear path and he just went for it. So that was like 62 yards there, I think, which was a big boost. But no, just his ability, like ever since the second half of the SMU game, where they really started leaning on Jake on the design QB run, he's just been it's just gotten better and better and more deadly. And they just use it and give A-Rod credit. He's able to call that at very opportune moments. And Jake, just his ability to make plays with his legs. Like, he doesn't have, like, he's not Taysom Hill, but man, he is smart and he can move and cut. And I love that element of BYU's offense. And I think that has really helped BYU, and it's added that other element to the game. Let's see. TR Play says, stop with the undefeated smack. Enjoy the moment. The next game is all that matters. Yeah. I hope the team thinks that way and doesn't focus on it. Like, I hope they have goals. From what I've heard from Connor Pay, if you listen to Locked On Cougars podcast with Jake, why am I forgetting his name as an everydayer? But anyway, Connor came on and he said as much that, yeah, we have big goals. We have aspirations to make the playoff, but that's not something the coaches don't let us focus on that. We're really focused on each game, and I hope they are. It seems like they lost focus a little bit with Oklahoma State the last week, and I hope they focus on that. I hope Utah, and it should be easy, is all they focus on. But as fans, we can think about that a little bit, as much as we might think we can impact it. But yeah, enjoy the moment. I agree. This year I've been enjoying each win along the way. Haven't been so caught up in it, but at this point, it's I think it's 8-0. It's great achievement, regardless of what happens the rest of the season. This has been a very successful season for BYU, and they should be proud. But also at this point, I think the goalpost has moved. I think we can expect more things. This does seem like a different kind of team, and we have some good expectations for them. But yeah, appreciate that. Here we have the alternative hypothesis says the two teams with the lowest talent composites, ISU and BYU, at the top of the conference. Transfer portal equals more turnover for high talent teams, high stability, developmental programs benefit. Yeah, it's very interesting because BYU was a team last year that had the high turnover, right? And now this year we're seeing the benefit of more stability, which is one of the things. A side note, but one of the things that I think benefited our men's basketball last year was that stability with a couple key additions, but mostly a lot of the same guys. Which is one thing that makes me wonder about this year is we're bringing in a lot of talent, but it's a lot of new guys. Now I'm still very high on this upcoming basketball team for this next season, but it does give you a little bit of pause. Hopefully they're able to gel and put it all together. But yeah, back to football though, and your comment, yeah, it really is cool to see these teams that have developed players and kept them around do well. And it's also another thing that makes the Big 12 fun, right? Is that it's different teams, it seems like almost every year, that are competing at the top of the conference. And so it's a lot of fun. And so, again, enjoy it while we can, because there's no guarantee BYU would be back in a similar position next year. So just enjoy the ride as we go. Let's see. 1-2 says, ironically, I think the only game we were favored to win was OSU, which was our closest. We are favored in all the remaining games. That is a good point. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is the only game this season we were favored to win, and it is the one that we nearly lost. So the fact that we're favored in the rest of these games, that's why I felt kind of glad that BYU was overlooked seemingly in this last game, and that they were not favored to win it. Because again, hopefully that keeps this team motivated. I don't know where their heads are at now, or how closely they even look at that, or what, but hopefully that doesn't mean anything. That's more coincidence than anything. Drake Troll, you mean Drake Toll? Yeah, from Spencer Duncan. No, I was talking about Jake Hatch. I just was forgetting his Jake's last name, who actually it looks like we'll be having Jake Hatch on this next week. We're trying to lock down everything, but he's been kind enough to say he'll come on with us. So more information on that when we get it, but we'll be posting that later in the week. So again, another good reason to like and subscribe so you can catch that video as it comes out. Ryan Wilkinson said, nope, got to be weekly mindset. Yeah, for the team, absolutely. As fans, we can have fun with it, but also, yeah, at this point, it's 2 weeks of Utah hate week. So I think we do have fun with this one. Enjoy the Holy War. It is back, and it is time to go all in on it. It's back, and it's in conference, and we'll be together despite what Kyle Whittingham says or thinks will happen. For the foreseeable future, this is going to be an in-conference game, and that is a good thing for college football, especially for those in the state of Utah. A lot of fun there with that, and it should not disappoint, I think. John Daughter says, I'm hoping for fur. I don't know if that was a typo or an intentional Utah fur. A Big 12 championship game between undefeated between BYU and ISU. Yeah, I mean, that's best case scenario for the conference, right? I do think having two undefeated teams that play in the conference championship game is going to be the Big 12's best chance of getting two teams into getting them a bid, or having the Big 12 be a two team bid into the playoff. However, it looks like it could be a tough game. I'm not sure, although, that I really love a rematch with Kansas State either, because that is a very good team. And even though a lot of things BYU won that game very soundly and deserved to win that game. People call it fluky. It wasn't fluky. BYU created a lot of those turnovers, but again, a lot of those things aren't necessarily easy to replicate again, especially on a neutral field. And so that could also be just as tough. So, but yeah, if both teams are undefeated going into that game and it's a good game, even if BYU loses, I still think I like their chances at getting into the playoff as an at-large bid. And like you said, it's good for the conference. Big 12 is obviously fighting for perception here, which is why I'm like everyone except for SMU and the ACC to lose out. All right. 1-2 says BYU also leading the Big 12 in points scored. offense being overlooked somewhat because the defense has been so notable. Yeah, absolutely. And the defense is part of what has put BYU in position to score a lot of those points right on short fields. But BYU has done really well at scoring on those short fields, and so many turnovers. They turn right around, and almost the next play they've got a touchdown. And so, yes, the defense has played really well to put BYU in those positions, but the offense has been the one that has capitalized on it. So, yeah, absolutely, the offense has done well. I think obviously with the run game getting uh, back back up to snuff with LJ Martin and Ropati being healthy. I really like this team going forward because it does seem like they continue to improve each week. I hope they continue to improve, tighten some things up a little bit. But yeah, you like it when you can score that much and win as much as BYU has. Um, and while there's still lots of room to improve, it really bodes well for this team as they continue to look ahead now to Utah in the Holy War. So all right. Well, let me know any favorite moments from this game or anything that really stood out to you. Otherwise, we'll get through last couple comments here and wrap up this show. But here we have the alternative hypothesis says BYU lacks stars due to low talent. Media like stars, human interest equals doesn't like BYU and ISU. Solid all around play isn't as exciting as star performers. It's true, and it's really dumb. It seems to be the problem. They like the big name brands, which we see the kind of the bias towards them in the rankings. They like those star players like Miami. They've got a really great quarterback. They talk about fluky wins. People are still debating whether that Virginia Tech win you know, was a touchdown, wasn't it? So um, but anyway, people love that. You're right, which is crazy because having a complete team and isn't that the ideal? Isn't that what everybody's striving to do? Is not put it all onto a few players, but to really have a complete team where everyone's doing their part and that elevates the whole team. I feel like that's got to be what everyone's striving to accomplish, and that teams like BYU and ISU are able to do that but not getting maybe all the recognition that they deserve. Now they are both top 12 teams, so it's not like they're being completely overlooked. Although it's hard to once you get to 7-0, which is the last rankings we're looking at. But it's still weird to me that Iowa State is ranked ahead of BYU, even though they haven't done as much now coming into the end of the season, depending on how they do it, their conference or their schedule gets tougher and BYU's gets easier. So they might even out. But at this point, Iowa State has not done more than BYU. But again, it won't matter if they both continue to win. Things will even themselves out at the end of the day. So, yeah, are you guys rooting for Iowa State next week when they play? Would you like to see them go undefeated, or are you rooting for which would kind of be best case scenario for everyone, the Big 12, and for the winner loser of the Big 12 conference championship game? Or are you rooting for anyone to lose because it will improve BYU's odds of getting into that conference championship game, which really should be our ultimate goal, or our top goal is seeing BYU win each game at a time and then ultimately making it to the conference championship. That's one that I go back and forth on, but yeah, it's fun seeing a team like Iowa State do well. And 1-2 here says favorites, fake field goal. Oh, favorite plays throughout the game. Appreciate it. The fake field goal, that is a great one. I think one that'll stand out a lot. Chase Roberts catching the ball with one hand and oh yeah, that was a pretty great catch. And they went back to review it. At first, I thought they were going to go review if that was even a touchdown. It looked like it on my first view. Commentators thought maybe as well, but ultimately he still got credit for the catch, and BYU still got the touchdown. So that was a pretty great one. A lot of fun ones in this game that'll be fun to go back and watch. Think about it: the last two times BYU has played UCF. They have just been pretty dominant performances, although both times BYU let UCF kind of come back in and chip away at that score. So now BYU's record against the other three, the schools that came in with BYU to the Big 12 from the American. We only have that one loss to UCF when we had who were we on? Our backup Taysom Hill was injured, and it was a game I couldn't even watch. I think it was on CBS Sports or something. Couldn't find it, but yeah, that was our only loss against all those programs. I have 3 or 4 wins against everybody, so pretty good. Although I don't know how meaningful that is, but it's nice, nice to have. So use over those guys when we play them and can trash talk a little bit. But again, trash talk for Utah is on. So let's make sure to ramp that up over these next 2 weeks as we get hyped up for the Holy War. It is back. It's back in conference. I'm really excited about that. And so I'm ready to love this game. It was awesome, but I'm already excited to move past it. Going to go back and watch a lot of Holy War moments over the many years, and get hyped up for that. And I've been to 2 of them, and one went well, one didn't. So hopefully this is another one that BYU can have. And then my son will have, continued to live in a world where BYU had never lost to Utah, which is a good world to live in. So on that note, I will leave it there. But if you haven't yet, please like the video, subscribe, and that way you can check all our content throughout the week. Like I said, we will hopefully have, it is a bye week, so a little bit different schedule. We won't do a Know the Foe segment, but we will have Jake Hatch on and probably do a little bit of a conversation on Utah throughout part of that, as well as our picks and all that other stuff as we get ready to go into the Holy War ramp up week, in which case we will do a little bit more deep dive into that game. So be sure to subscribe so you can catch all that. And last one from Spencer, took the words out of my mouth. Go Cougs.